Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes, but hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint up. I just left a message in the session chat to make sure you go ahead and ask sessions or questions throughout the session so that I can be as interactive as possible with answering them. It's a little different platform that I'm used to presenting on, so I don't get to see all of you, which is really sad because I like to see faces, especially many that I know from wonderful events and festivals here in our beautiful state. So be sure and say hi in our session so I can see who's all here, what festival or an event you were with. I know a great deal of you guys are volunteers and or paid staff, so I love to know that information too. That helps me in kind of conveying the message and letting you guys know what we're going to do. Oh, looks like Andy is here from downtown Petoskey, Billy from Livonia Parks and Rec, Michael Smith, I think that's my friend Mike, which I love. That's amazing. Mike, I actually got a package from you today from the Coast Guard Festival in Grand Haven. Amazing. Thank you so much. Lisa on board here from the Michigan Association of Fairs and Festivals, which is great. We love our friends over there on the other part of the state representing the fair side of things, which is awesome. Man, we're really getting my technology brain going here with the answering session stuff and presenting. I think is going to be great. We're just going to give it another minute or so. Sorry, I'm actually in my office today, so I wanted to shut the door as our staff works remotely and in the office. We kind of go back and forth as we are still kind of doing some stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit. Oh, Linda! I'm so excited. I'm so bummed I don't get to see all your faces. As with everyone else, I'm sure you're kind of like me. You're a people person, and we miss people. We're in this industry for a reason. We love people. We love doing stuff. And it's really been a rocky year with not being able to do, what I really feel like we're all on this earth to do, which is be together and celebrate and create our little parties in our community. Linda Kelly's awesome. So excited to have her here along with all the rest of you. And it looks like we can go ahead and get started in just a moment. I think everyone's in here. I'm sure like the rest of you, you're all zoomed out and Google Hangout out and all the rest of the wonderful ways that we have found to communicate during what I like to call a very challenging time. It's definitely been an interesting time frame. So it's very apparent that we're obviously going to talk about canceling without controversy, which is when the National Cherry Festival canceled and kind of how we got there. And more importantly, what we did because of it and how we communicated that to our community. And I know we've had to cancel events since. I mean, it has been a very long 6 months. I like to say that the last 6 months of my life has been the longest 20 years ever because I now have gray hair. My kid is almost 2. It is crazy how long the last 6 months have been. And, I don't think it's over yet, but graciously, we're going to have a lot of great stuff coming. And I think, brighter days are coming for everyone, and we all need to remember that. So canceling without controversy. And please, as I said in the beginning, ask questions throughout the session. Just go ahead and type them in. I'm not going to go into full presentation mode just so that I can go ahead and continue to answer the questions that are coming in. So technical issue on my end. I don't have 2 monitors set up to do that. But please let me know at any time if you can't hear me or if the PowerPoint isn't happening for some reason. I am watching the session chat. So I am, there we go, it's already not working. I am Paye. I'm the executive director here at the National Cherry Festival, as well as the Festival Foundation. And I'll get into a little bit more of what that is. I have a bachelor's degree from Davenport University. I am married to my wonderful husband, Joe, and we have a 20-month-old son, Andrew, and you can see him in pictures there. He is very much a part of our volunteer and event life here in our beautiful Traverse City, Michigan. I am a certified festival and event executive with the International Festival and Events Association. So that means I have those lovely little words or letters after my name, CFEE. Happy to answer those questions, what that is in the future as well. I volunteer for multiple boards in our community. As with the rest of you, I know we're all community leaders, and that's such an important thing. We here at the Festival Foundation have the National Cherry Festival, the Iceman Cometh, Bike Race, which would have actually happened tomorrow. Sadly, it has also been canceled for this year. The Leaping Leprechaun 5K, which is St. Patrick's Day, and many more different events. So what we do here, our mission is to promote cherries, community involvement in the Grand Traverse region. This is something I'm going to talk a lot more in depth in a presentation tomorrow about, which is really being ready and prepared for 21. But the important part of this statement is that our mission is very broad. So community involvement in the Grand Traverse region can kind of go across the spectrum. So you can see our story. We started with the National Cherry Festival. We have expanded to the Iceman Cometh, which we acquired in 2019, the Charity Ball Drop, which we acquired in 2018, and the Leaping Leprechaun, which we actually started and became one of our events initially. This has helped our organization be a little more broad across the year and has helped with our financial involvement and really made sure that the festival can sustain itself. And that was something that's really important. So this as a whole is the Festival Foundation, which was founded in 2007. But just a few years ago, we decided to kind of change things up. We have an 8-day festival at the National Cherry Festival, 150 events. We have 5 full-time staff. This is important in the later discussion of how we're all still here, because that has been a really hard thing for us. We have not laid off our staff. We are all still working full-time. Our volunteers are not in as often as they used to be. There are a lot more from-home projects that they're working on. We do have contract staff, and we always have an annual intern program. So our staff, there are 5 of us here, and we have maintained and been able to work this entire time because we really looked at different ways of doing things, and that has been extremely hard. But of course, in March, life changed for everyone, and we came off a really gangbuster end of 2019. The ball drop happened, Leaping Leprechaun was supposed to happen, and about 2 days before Leaping Leprechaun happened, school shut down, our state kind of closed up, and we went, well, I guess we're going to do our first ever virtual event. And we made the Leaping Leprechaun a virtual event in under 48 hours. We had everything ready, we switched the registration, and we managed to make it work. And it was phenomenal. I could not do what I do, and our staff couldn't if we didn't have the volunteers and the core group of people that we consider part of our Cherry family to really make this work. And that brings us to the day that 2020 went down in history for us. Like it did everyone else, everyone has kind of their D-Day. For us, it was April 16th. Now, we put this out on Facebook. This is one of our videos that is the largest reached and has the most engagements and the most shares. And that's what I show here. 1,400 shares of a video because we could not just say, yep, the festival's canceled. Don't worry. It's fine. We're an economic driver to our community, as all of you are into your communities. We couldn't just say after 94 years, I'm sorry, we're just not going to app that this year. It's fine. Everything's fine. No, we took this time to be more of an inspiration to things and say, we know there are better days coming. We know that. We feel it. And this is our video to really encompass that. Because how do you tell someone a tradition in your community that you all love isn't happening? You don't send an email or a text message and say, well, it's fine. You produce something, it's well thought out, it's considerate, it's consistent, and it really tells the story of where you're going. Because at the time, of course, in the beginning of all this, we didn't know what was happening. To be fair, we still don't. But we didn't know much then, especially then. It was about 30 days after our schools shut down, and we said, well, we're facing more expense if we don't make a decision now because entertainers are going to start asking for money. We're going to be at the part where we don't have a choice, and we're going to lose more money if we take the risk to try and hold out for what we don't know, or we can make the decision now and risk that as well. So the board met, lots of meetings, lots of communication, and they said, what is the staff recommending? And I said, the staff is recommending that we postpone. Now, we use these words postpone and cancel sort of interchangeably, but one of the things that we really talked about in our wording and why we talked about it was that we didn't want to commit ourselves to not having any cherry celebration because, again, we didn't know. We don't know what's coming. So April 16th was the day in our world that went down in history. It was one of the hardest days for me personally. I have been here for 30 years in some capacity or another. And, I got up in the morning and said, yep, we'd planned it. The days leading up to it were really tough, as with everyone here. I'm sure canceling your events is it's really tough on everyone. How do you do this? How do you make this statement publicly and say, we are officially postponed? Now, that being said, we said we're postponed till 2021 because that was the best thing we could do at the time. That way, if there was a possibility, we could come back and say, we're going to do some celebration, maybe not the National Cherry Festival, but we're going to have something. That was kind of why we chose that wording, was what can we do? So we put out this statement on our website, and we put out Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and the phone started ringing, and it ended up being a very long day or a few days of having to kind of have those conversations and why and what do you know that the public doesn't know, and why are you making this decision in April for an event in July? Well, as we all know in this room, if you've already gotten to April, your event is already planned. You're already done. You're just ready to turn it on. And that's a really hard thing to explain to the average Joe in the community of why 3 months before, 90 days at this point, you're ready to cancel an event now. But to them, it's an economic driver for the community. And our downtown is looking at it. We are in a very tourist area, and they panicked that for once they weren't going to have the festival. And for once we were ecstatic and humbled that they loved us, because we sometimes are looked at as people who create traffic. We create noise. We create trash. So we are not always loved. So for us, this love felt extraordinary, that we were cherished and believed that we were important to the community. And we always knew we were, but we felt this overwhelming love and just a big community hug, not to be left out of the people who didn't love us and made that abruptly apparent in everything they did. We received the hate mail, as I'm sure most of you have, both in person, taped to the door, both by actual postal service, both email, phone calls, the threats, all of it. And we very nicely worked with our local officials and said, yeah, we're being threatened, we know, but we can't really fix this. Because one of the things that we had to come to grips with really fast is we could not fix COVID-19. We could not fix what was happening, but we can choose how we responded to it. And that was a big thing for us, is how do we do that? And one of the biggest things that we did initially as a team was we got a counselor on board. I know it sounds crazy, but in this kind of time frame, I went and reached out to someone and I said, can you be available for our staff? Because they're going to go through a lot. Our volunteers are going to go through a lot. There's a lot of stuff that they need the uplifting, and they need that bright spot in the time of we don't know. And that's a huge thing right now. It's a whole lot of I don't know. So April 16th, we went ahead and said, we're postponed. We're not happening in, 2020. I find this picture very important because this is how we got to that decision, and then what we did to make sure that we were meeting our community kind of where they needed us to meet them, with the why and the how and the what was going to happen from here, because that was the big questions on the table, is how are we disseminating the information out? How are we going to continue to support our community when we don't know what's happening? And how is this all going to look? So this is actually my son, Andrew. This is shopping at Myers, but this is how I felt. This is exactly it. Like, this was this roller coaster for several weeks of how do we do this? We created our war room. That's literally what it says on the conference room wall, war room, because here's what we were doing. We were going into war against everything and all of it. And it was, do we postpone or do we cancel? What wording do we use? The amount of times we reread the press release, I don't even know. This is where we hit controversy completely. When we said the words postpone versus cancel, it definitely struck people, because they said, well, they said postpone. That means it's still happening, just at a later date. Oh no, they said cancel. It's not happening. They're like, well, they postponed till 2021. It spurred up a lot more than honestly we thought it would. So that in the future, we may make a slightly different call on that one. But the idea was that we may still have a celebration if appropriate. And that was kind of what we were trying to leave that option open. And that was why we really were painstaking over that one word, is how we do this. Then it was all about the consistent, continuous communication out to the world. But it was also individualized. We had ticket holders we had to refund. We had race registrations we had to deal with. And when I say deal, we had actually taken the Festival of Races at that point and moved it outside of our festival to September. So technically we did postpone that event and moved it to another month within the year. So those race registrations all had to go over there. So those people needed to be communicated that. Ticket holders needed to be told how we were refunding tickets and when. Then we had the general festival goer. We're a free event to the public. How do we tell the general festival goer what's going on? How do we communicate with our vendors, our sponsors? So we sat down and created the plan. And this is, part of it in our war room of saying, okay, here is who on our team is going to take care of it. You're going to call the sponsors, and you're going to do it a day before this goes public. Not too much further than what you want the public to know, because as we all know, once information is out there, and especially something as, great as an event, they're going to all start talking about it. So the night before, April 15th, the night before, we went ahead and started dividing up the tasks and saying, okay, you're calling these people, you're calling these people. Sponsors and vendors were a big one. I was shocked when I talked to a few of our really large vendors, and they had not heard from the events personally before they canceled. A lot of vendors kept saying, thank you for calling us and letting us know, because we read most of our cancellations in the paper or online or on Facebook. And that just made my heart sad because I treat them like their family. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I think everyone just has a lot going on and they're trying to figure it out. And one of the things that came up is that we have a staff. We have people that are here every day, all day working, that had the time to do that. And not every festival and event has that ability. So one of the things was trying to make this a little more streamlined. And how can we start putting those pieces in place of, here's how you cancel an event. And now those guides are actually out there, because before, none of us want to do that. That's exactly the opposite of what we're all doing. Is we don't want to cancel ever. And if we do, it's a piece of our event. I don't think anyone came into 2020 and said, yep, we're just going to cancel all those festival and events and they're just not going to happen. There isn't a guide for this. So getting the sponsors to know what's going on and making sure there is some stuff that is available and kind of having those pieces, I think are really awesome. And it looks like Sonia just put something in the session chat, which is awesome. A great link to, I haven't looked at this myself, but from a carnival perspective, just ways to work through reopening in 2021, which is great. I'm giving a session on that tomorrow at 9:25 on how to reopen in 21, but that's awesome. I will look at that because that's great. I think that there's the making sure that you have all the communication and ready to go at the same time. So our sponsors knew, our vendors knew, they all got phone calls. Then it went down to making sure that any other stakeholder had an email about an hour before it went public. I see board members on here, and that is something that I wanted to kind of specify. While our board members were part of the decision-making process, they weren't part of the disseminating the information process. So as soon as we made the decision as an organization that we were not having the National Cherry Festival, they then had to kind of sit on the sidelines for a minute and wait for us to give them the plan of how it was going to get sent out. So we did inform them then, hey, by the way, that decision you all made, we are now going ahead and releasing it, because we talked to local media to make sure when it would be a good time to do that. So we informed everyone, we had all of our emails scheduled out. There's some amazing programs out there that do that. We use MailChimp, but that have them all scheduled out ahead of time. So the day of, everything went automatically. We had everything pre-scheduled on our social media, and it was just boom, 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 boom. Everything was going out and going through. But the deciding of the when, the go, no-go dates are different from every single organization and every single event. And I think that's something very important to know. For us, 90 days out was really a sweet spot for us. That was going to cost us less in the long run to be able to do. But it was something that we decided at that point that was our time frame. That may not be that way every year for us, and that definitely may not be the way for you. By all means, do what you need to do within your time frame. Look at your contracts. And that's what it says, things to consider. We made huge lists that I don't think we'd ever thought of before of if we had to cancel, Who do we call? When do we call them? What does the contract say? How much are we going to owe for it? And by the way, when is our out dates on all of this? I think this is a big piece to look at. And I call it the Santa list. You're checking it twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, because if you're going to make a decision like canceling and the when, and like with us and with everyone, I don't think anyone had at that time, there weren't all the guidelines in place. We were all in kind of lockdown, staying home and schools closed. And okay, are they going to reopen by June? Are we going to reopen by July? If we reopen by June, can we continue to go? And those are plans every event should now have. Now, here is our time frame. Here's the decision we need to make by this date, or we're going to lose X amount of dollars. And those are all pieces that need to play in. Or if it's also a health and safety issue like this one particularly is, how do you make that decision for your volunteers? We have 2,400 volunteers. Like most of you, we run on volunteers. And is it a safe situation for them to be in? Is it something that's important for them to be a part of your festival? Can you have your festival without them? We can't. So if it's not a safe environment, like COVID-19 was not and is not at the moment, to have 2,400 people together, then we can't have our event successfully. And those were things that we all took into account. So your contracts, your entertainment, your vendors, city, county, state, where everyone is lying, what everything is going on in your current news cycle, that's a big piece. If you have to cancel your event right now, like today, I'm very sorry because I feel like it will just get lost in everything else going on. And those are things to really keep in mind, is what is going on currently at all levels, city, county, state, and kind of what you're doing to send out your information. Obviously, it's everywhere. It's calling all of your media partners. It's making sure that if you do a video or some way creatively to go ahead and cancel your event, make sure that goes to media along with your press release, sending it on social media, all platforms. I think that is very good. And what I feel we did right, because we took some time, we were not the first people to cancel our event. So we were able to learn from many others who had already done it. And I highly recommend that. Look and see what they've done, read their press releases, take things that you feel are relevant to your event and your organization that you can kind of build upon. The resources are out there. Sonia just put one in there. The resources are out there. You just got to find them. And if we can be of any help, myself personally, please, by all means, let me know. That is something that I think is very important to do that. In laying out sort of what we were going to do and how we did it, the other thing that we did is I reached out to every single fire chief, police chief, the mayor, the head of the chamber, the head of tourism. While they're not involved in the actual decision to not have the event, there certainly are community leaders. And I wanted all of them to know what was going on. So the night before, at about midnight, because I didn't want them to have the information any too soon, I sent them this email and with the attached press release and said, this is going to go out in the morning, stay safe, stay healthy, eat cherries. We love you all. However, this is happening. The next morning, the Record Eagle called me because they had gotten this email. So my local newspaper had gotten it. And this kind of brings that importance of making sure that you're controlling the content and when it goes out. And because the Record Eagle even told me, and this is how I knew my email got out, was that I said, stay safe, healthy, and eat cherries. So I also give a little disclaimer here to making sure that whatever you send people, you don't mind if it ends up in the media, because it's possible it will. So my exact email got released to the local paper by one of the recipients who got it, that we were going to go ahead and cancel. Thankfully, we were already prepared. It was going out. So again, watch when your content is getting released and kind of what is happening. So once your cancellation is out, it's there. This is the flood of things that happen. The media picks it up. They talk about it and say, oh, here's where it is. And then they spin it in whatever form they would like. All of these were very true, very positive, yes, this was a loss. The loss of the 2020 Cherry Festival hits hard. That is one of my favorite titles, because that is definitely the way all of us felt in our community, as with this entire state and region. Every time I saw an event cancel, it just broke my heart. Cancellations, coronavirus, this became the head news, and this devoured the time of the staff for quite a while to just kind of deal with this. And so, yes, all the hate mail and stuff came off this, been saying, wow, you've destroyed my business because you canceled the festival. Well, no, I didn't destroy your business, but unfortunately, yes, we're all going to take a really hard hit this year, and that's just kind of going to be what it's going to be for a bit. The big piece that really saved us is having people that were advocates for us and understood our position. And I highly, highly recommend this. We had lined up before we announced the head of Traverse City Tourism this. He wrote a beautiful forum piece in the Record Eagle, which is our local paper, about why we needed to do this and why this was for our community. And we didn't do this to destroy businesses, because that was where part of that narrative was headed. And we were able to kind of head it off at the fork there and say, no, that's not what we did. We had a city commissioner. There's the screenshot of Amy Shamrow. She wrote a beautiful one. She's a city commissioner here. She may not love our festival. For those that are dealing with the controversy of love, hate of your festival, fair, or an event, having city commissioners that are maybe not on your side, but understand that the stance you took was the one you needed to at the time, I think is great. And those were pieces that these came up, and these people happened to tag me in them on Facebook, and I saved them because I think they're very powerful. Jessica, it happens to work for Sapphire Events and Tickets. She does our websites and things like that. But having another vendor in another side of the country support festival and events and realize that we're all doing the best we can. Unfortunately, there's circumstances that are out of our control right now that we're having to navigate in, that there isn't a playbook for this. And everyone's just trying to kind of piece it together. Having your advocates ready, having them prepared with statements. We had our mayor ready with a statement. And let me tell you, he's not always our biggest fan. He is now, and we love that. But our mayors here have not always been the biggest fan of us. So we are a private organization, if I didn't kind of address that, and we are not funded by our community. We actually pay the city to run our event here. And that's something that's a little different sometimes in other cities. And Traverse City Tourism, the local CVB, is not the owner of the Cherry Festival, but they're a huge supporter. A lot of you know Trevor Chakach. He used to be the executive director here, and I used to work for him. And he's an amazing person who really did step up when we needed him to say, you guys made the right call for the right reasons, and kind of told the community to just back up for a second. Having these advocates, huge way to do this. This gets out to the community, and it's someone other than your voice. And it's someone speaking on your behalf, but knows what you've got going on. So find those advocates, have them ready and willing to be able to do that. I think it is really encouraging to do that. So Mike Smith just put a comment in there, which I totally agree with, which was the, Mike Smith works for the Coast Guard Festival, so he's got a little different take on it because he's got the military piece to it too, which I think is amazing and important. But they always have to review things as well. So that's definitely a good point, Mike, that there's stuff to be able to look at, and a different, kind of side of it, of having to keep that partner and that piece very, very important. And I think that's amazing. I think that that's great that you were able to do that and kind of see how you're able to make that relationship continue and to work. So why we chose to postpone, and this is kind of a big one for us, and I'm gonna change just for a second here so I can show you. Gotta love technology. All right. So the reason we did postponing is because the community said, well, wait, how are we going to still celebrate cherries? What about a virtual cherry pie make and bake? What about doing that? Hey, let's do festival in a bag. Like, how can we still celebrate the festival and support this organization? Because we still have staff. We still have people. We still have payroll to make every 2 weeks. We still have an office we rent. We still have the overhead that I was terrified about. The moment this all ended, I was like, I have no idea how we're going to continue to move forward and stay alive. Let's create a Michigan Harvest Virtual Challenge, a virtual run series where we are able to really harness the energy that we have and do 4 different runs through 4 months. Let's get a cool finisher medal for it. How do we do education on the cherry series? The cherry growers, our industry, this was a huge part of it. This is how the Cherry Festival survives is because we have these amazing growers. We have this amazing industry who loves us. And we said, yeah, let's do that. And how do we continue? If we're going to cancel our big event, what other things can we come up with to still be within our mission, still be within celebrating our community and community impact and making sure that that's a really important part of still what we do, and trying to provide a little joy during this really strange time? Let's have a porch parade, because why not? And when I talk about making sure you're, checking out what other festivals and events are doing, the Portland Rose Festival did this out in Portland, Oregon. And we literally called them and said, hey, can we steal it? And by steal it, can we just copy everything on your website, your rules, your application, and put our logo on it and take it? And they said, of course you can. Festivals and events have been around for years. Like, that's why MFEA and these organizations exist, is to learn from each other and truly take pieces of it and make it work. And if it's the whole thing, great. Happy to, provide that and make sure that you can do that. Our porch parade was able to raise $11,000 for us because we sold sponsorship on the signs and the people decorated their porches. We had over 100 families and homes on this porch parade. And then we did a VIP parade procession with our prince and princesses. So we have a small royalty program of 60 kids from the local elementary schools. One of the hardest things that I had to do during my time as this whole process of being the executive director and talking to these kids, we had a Zoom meeting with them, with all 60 first graders, during this time when we had postponed the festival. And it broke my heart. It was 2 days before we were going to announce that we weren't having the festival, and they were so excited and wanted their float theme and to build their floats, and they were excited about getting their dresses and their crowns, and I couldn't handle it. I walked away from the computer. I cried. I looked at my husband. I said, I'm lying to children. I'm now lying to children who think there's going to be a festival, and in 2 days I'm going to destroy their world. And he said, no, you're doing this because you need to do this, and this is the best thing to do. And I just lost it. I could not understand how we could do this. And I think for us, it was too much. The kids, we could not take things away from kids. Couldn't. So we found a way to do the porch parade and a VIP procession, and we had all the parents decorate their cars, and we drove through town and looked at all the porches as the parade for the kids. The kids wore their crowns, they wore their official festival gear. But when you have 60 kids, and normally you have 2 per school and they're on one float, we now went to 120 cars because, of course, they couldn't be in each other's vehicles due to social distancing and not living in the same household. And it turned into a little bit of a nightmare, but we made it work. Police were awesome. We drove through town. They saw the homes, and these kids thought it was an amazing time to celebrate what they had done. And this is something that the kids are chosen in the fall, so they were already picked. And Queen Sierra was there, our national cherry queen, who's doing a 2-year reign, first ever, because what do? You make the best that you can out of what you're doing. And I think that is what we found. And so part of our reasoning for postponing versus canceling is we had some of these ideas, and we had some of the stuff come up that was a way to do things that we could. I'm now reading Mike Smith's stuff right now. Apparently the Coast Guard Festival also took the idea and took pictures. They have a poster ready to sell featuring the businesses and homes from the front door salutes from the Coast Guard City, USA. I love that. That is a great way to, take something that you've seen somewhere else and make it your own. That's exactly what we did with Portland, and said, we're going to do this. But Portland, I will say this, Portland did not monetize it. We found a way to monetize it by selling sponsorship on the signs to help us continue to move forward. That is something that we were very concerned about. As with the rest of you, we don't all have slush funds. We don't have these rainy day funds that are really established. And a lot of festival events I know in Michigan are small, volunteer run, and maybe they're large and volunteer run, and that is even better. I know that's tough. And I definitely know that that's hard to find the time and energy to be able to do these things. I will say the porch parade was not a ton of time, and we got the signs donated and we put sponsors on them. And so if anyone wants more information about that, my email address is at the end, and I will show you that, and you're more than welcome to email me, and I will definitely assist you in how to do some of these more creative versions of kind of our traditional events right now, because we all have parades, but unfortunately that's something that we're going to have to kind of work through for a little while. In the process of all the controversy that we were going through, we created a Festival Foundation website because we kind of got asked about our mission and the fact that we have these 4 events, and 2 of which, one went virtual, one was postponed. Iceman was in jeopardy, which, as you all now know, that would have been tomorrow, and that was canceled. So 3 are down and ball drop is left to go. So of our 4 events we normally have, 1 happened virtually thus far, except for all the other stuff you just saw. So I think that there is opportunity in all of this to steer it the right way. So what we did is we started steering the media kind of away from, hey, we canceled, and the community away from, hey, we're not doing anything, to we're still relevant. We're still in the community. We're still important. The community is important to us. We're important to them. How do we all work together and say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to kind of start figuring out how to do this. Growers program. Why not start fundraising in the middle of a pandemic? Sounds great. Really no option or opportunity was off the table. We sat down with the staff and I said, do y'all have ideas? Let's put them together. And we had everything from, I'm pretty sure, car washing to light parades to the porch parade. The festival in a bag was driven out of this. The gift boxing that we're now doing for holidays. I really suggest and highly employ that all of your events and festivals, if you can find ways to reduce your expenses and create income right now during this very turbulent time that we're all kind of in until we can have large event gatherings together, find a way to keep your event relevant. Keep it relevant for your sponsor. You can still find the ROI in there, and the sponsors are still wanting to do stuff. A lot of sponsors may not necessarily be on board with an in-person event, but if you can do virtual or hybrid or a micro event or something that is smaller and falls within the current guidelines, do it. Find a way to do it. Find a way to stay at the forefront of your guests and your volunteers and the people that matter most to you, because those are the things that I think are going to define us as an industry, that we were resilient. And as an event industry in total, I'm watching people really trying to think outside the box. I know that there are several that cannot do things quite yet. I have not yet seen I figured Sonia was going to come back. I saw the last name there. Yes, that was actually where I'm going too. I have not seen how amusements and carnival rides and all of the favorite things have been able to be put back in just yet. Because I would love to. There is nothing I want more right now than a funnel cake. It is one of my joys, and I didn't get one this year, and it's a really, really, it's strange. I don't know how all of this is going to work. I wish it did. And I applaud all of these companies just trying to figure it out. I'm waiting to see a virtual like tilt-a-whirl. So if we can get on that, that sounds amazing. So someone rides in the rides and we start like videotaping it. I think those, might make us seasick, but I think there's some possibility there for sure. Oh, that's a good idea. So Sonia just said we performed drive-through food concessions, and it was amazing for us to get feedback from customers. I've heard of some of these, kind of like a food train or food carnival, where they drive through and you get like your hot dog and your elephant ear and your I'm loving it, and I'm also really hungry. So I think those are great things, and I think everyone is getting completely out of their comfort zone, out of the box thinking. There is nothing off the table anymore to keep our industry alive. So great question. What was the biggest disappointment with relation to sponsors? Honestly, we didn't have a lot of disappointment to sponsors. I had one sponsor that kind of said, we need the refund, which we totally understood. And we did offer refunds. So let me say that for our sponsors, we offered them to either transfer their sponsorship to 2021. And basically I'm pushing the problem down the road. They could donate their sponsorship to the Festival Foundation, and we would, of course, give them their tax write-off letter, or we could refund it. And we, I would say it was probably a 50% refund and maybe 25% donated and maybe 25% deferred, probably, I think is probably kind of where we were at. So it didn't disappoint me, honestly. It was very good. I think a lot of our sponsors expected it. I think what was the surprise to me was that a lot of them immediately they said, you're not just going to turn the whole festival virtual. That was a big question. And I said, well, I'm not real sure how to do virtual ultimate air dogs and virtual cherry pie eating and virtual pit spitting and virtual like there were certain things we could probably figure out, but there was so much that I'm like, how do you do that? And I think we weren't really at that virtual festival point yet in April when we did this. I think we have a lot more ideas now and a lot more things that we've seen other people do that we can all continue to feed off each other and say, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. Like, I love Sonia's idea of a carnival. And I can tell you, we're looking at some stuff like that in, at the Cherry Festival too, is how do we start doing this and how do we start making this work? The biggest thing, Mike, I would say on what to avoid with your sponsors and your vendors is kind of what I said about not telling them and letting them read it in the paper. Have a list ready, just a contact list, have it ready of, and who on your staff is going to take care of it, or which volunteer or which board chair, whoever, who is responsible for calling that person. Make sure you're maintaining that relationship. That has been a huge joy to us. I don't think we knew how much we were mattered. And I think that was really important for our own mental health to think, because not only were we not going to have our festival, we didn't know if we were going to have jobs. And that was a big thing too. It was like, what? It was the world's crashing down around us. We were the first industry to close, and we're going to be the last one to open. And that's something I've read, heard, and I stand by it. It is so true. Those relationships, and I know Mike has a great one with the U.S. Coast Guard, and he talks about it often, that there's a really amazing synergy with what his festival does, because his festival specifically celebrates a branch of the military. It's amazing. I think that those relationships, I was floored when I called. Arnold's Amusements does our amusement rides. They have for decades. When I called and talked to Tom Arnold's and Karen, and I got on the phone with them, and we all cried. That's what we did. I mean, it was, no one knew what to do and except cry and say, it's going to be all right. Brighter days are coming, and it's okay. And those things are difficult. Those are difficult conversations. But unfortunately, once you make 2 or 3 calls, they all know it's coming. They know when they're hearing from you. They literally answer the phone saying, please tell me you're not canceling your event. And I'm like, yep, we are. And what does this do for our contract? We added addendums to anyone that went ahead and just pushed their financial investment into 21. We sent them an addendum right away and said, okay, your contract's now extended to 21. So we extended the paperwork, we extended the financial agreement, we just moved on. But that is why it left us such a hole in 2020, is not having that income. We lost all of it. I mean, we refunded every ticket we had sold. We refunded credit card fees at a detriment to us. So we lost $8,000 there. It was like we were just losing money right and left. And that was where all those ideas, I looked at the staff and I said, if you all want to keep your jobs, as do I, we have to figure out what to do. Here's our monthly overhead, and we need to continue to make something and just try to push as far as we can and figure out what's going to look like. And our goal was to get to Iceman, which we had to cancel. So now the new goal is Leaping Leprechaun in March. It's these little timeline goals and just trying to keep everyone positive and know that eventually this will all end. In the meantime, we've all learned a great thing about canceling events, how to reread our contracts and make sure that our agreements are tightened up and top notch, taking reviews of probably all expenses that we have. So I think this is a great time for RFP processes, making sure that you're reviewing those. I can say from our end, we definitely looked at stuff we hadn't looked at in a long time and said, could we do this better? Could we do that better? I think those are some very important pieces to this, and making sure that your community knows you're still there, that your community knows you're still going to be there for another however many years old your event is, and saying that and keeping relevant, but also knowing that you did this for your community. And that was a big key takeaway for us. We received, along with the hate mail, we got the outpouring of support. We got the people who said, thank you for keeping us safe. We attract around 500,000 people to Traverse City. That's a lot. Traverse City wasn't ready for it in July. We had a very quiet-ish summer, yet we were the only place that was also open in our state this summer. And that created another piece of fun where people said, oh, we don't need the Cherry Festival anymore because we did fine without it. Well, we were the only thing open in the state. So let's not go quite to we don't need us anymore. And finding a way to draw our communication better with the city leadership and the government in and of itself, making sure that we said, hey, we know that we pay to be here and we pay a really large fee to the city to remain. Maybe we're not paying as much in the future because we don't have any money right now. Like we don't have the income. So we want to make ourselves and reposition ourselves a little bit more as that economic driver, that we are important, but that it's a partnership. And I think those are some very key words that have been said repeatedly over the last few months. It's all about partnership. Mike has a partnership with the Coast Guard. We have a partnership with our city. Those are things in community that I think sometimes have gotten lost with events and festivals, that we are not always on that like together. And some communities and cities are amazing and they are completely in sync on when their festival is going to happen and it's important and it's a driver, and some aren't. And it just depends. And I think we're finding time through this weirdness to go, all right, how can we do this better? How can we take this time to really change and maybe be a little less controversial when we make a large decision and say, yeah, we're not going to have a festival. Maybe instead of yelling at the festival, you're going to come back with, okay, they made this because this was the best decision at the time with the information that they had. And that's a big piece to it. The information you have at the time. So finding your go, no-go date, finding out when you can make those decisions, looking at your contracts, taking a real good inventory of all that, looking at your cash flow and saying, here's how long we can survive, here's what we can't, being honest with your stakeholders about that and saying, we would love, we know your sponsorship is X dollars and we are sorry, we can't have that event, but we have this really cool virtual run over here and we would love to shift your sponsorship to this. And be maintaining those personal relationships with your sponsors and your other stakeholders, you have a better possibility of doing that. I watched our sponsorship director, Alex, here being able to move financial investments around amazingly into different projects because we knew we needed to retain the investment if we could, but then we had to create something within the restrictions at that time. So it was, which are ever changing. And I think we've all learned a lot of resilience through all of this. Completely. Kind of how we are all continuing to function on a day-to-day. So with that, what happens in 2021? Well, tomorrow at the MFVA convention here, I will be presenting at 9:25 in the morning on Ready and Prepared 2021. I'm going to give some insights on what the industry is doing. We did a big presentation with the International Festival and Events Association recently and a task force on what is going to happen in 2021 and what we need to be prepared for. Because I think that everyone's question is, when are events coming back? No, I do not have that answer. That will not be in the presentation. I do not know. But we're going to talk about ways that you can be ready and prepared for when you can be an event in person, because all of us want to be back together in person as much as humanly possible. So that is what is on the docket for tomorrow. But thank you, everyone, for attending my session. I know we are a little early, so questions, I would love to answer anything else that you guys have. And by all means, this is my cell phone number and my email. So if you have any questions about anything you saw or want more information or want to talk about an event or a way to cancel something, or you want a copy of a press release or anything at all, please, by all means, let me know. I'm happy to share any and all information. I believe strongly in that. I think that is great. And I see Michael here saying, sorry, I'm reading about the festival dates. Oh, yeah. No, I think it's amazing, Mike, what you do with the honoring the service members. That is incredible. And I see Jessica. Oh, hi, Jessica. The Frankenwolf Dog bowl. Nice. I didn't even know you had a Frankenmuth dog bowl, but I'm very excited about this. Mini activities across 2 weekends. You guys have done a fantastic job in Frankenmuth with making sure that you can have what I call micro events, but those smaller events and the hybrid events, you guys have done a fantastic job of staying super relevant and in the face of everyone of like, hey, we're just doing it safely and we've got this. And I applaud you guys, my heroes, on being able to really get through this in a really great way. Any other questions? Thank you for my wonderful, or thank you for your patience on my difficulty with that presentation there for a second. I didn't know I was supposed to have 2 screens for this, so good to know as we kind of are getting through this. Well, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if I'm leaving or if I'm closing it out. I'm not really sure what I'm doing at the moment, but I'm going to probably leave and end this session and then enjoy the rest of the convention. Be sure, I believe, to bid on auction items. I haven't checked my auction bids today, so I'm going to go do that next because I know, especially the Zender's Splash Village, I've been bidding on that repeatedly. And I keep getting outbid, which is totally acceptable. So I've got to go back in, check my auction items and make sure, because I'm not sure when that auction closes. So enjoy the rest of the MFEA convention. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And for those joining my session tomorrow, I will see you then. And in the meantime, eat lots of cherries and I will talk to you soon.